With Brodie Kostecki and Todd Hazelwood, they've won the fastest Bathurst 1000 ever, from pole position to checkered flag in under 6 hours. Now, to pull it all apart, we're joined by five-time supercar champion and commentator, of course, Mark Skaife. Skaife, g'day.
G'day, Tony.
So clean and polite, this race, like they're kind of driving to church really, really fast. Didn't get a safety car until lap 132 of 161.
Yeah, it was a very fast race. If you're a team member or a driver, it would have been a cracking race, but we were starved of the normal chaos and the normal stuff that happens as accordance with Bathurst. You know, we have normally 5 or 6 safety cars. I think it was $101 to have no safety cars for the day, and it was like $1.80 or $1.90 to have 5 or 6 safety cars. That's how much chaos we had leading into the race. So for sure, everyone expected, you know, a bit more drama on Sunday. However, it was a ripping race, and Brodie Kostecki, who was on pole last year, is only the 6th driver in history to have back-to-back poles at Bathurst, and he drove superbly, and his young teammate Todd Hazelwood was just as good. He did a great job in the co-driving role.
Mark, tell us about qualifying, because there were a couple of massive accidents there.
Couple of really big shunts, Candice. David Reynolds fired in the fence going down through the S's, and so did Will Davison just after that. So have a look at this. This is David through the little kink in the S's, then it lost control, hits the fence just before the cutting, and that was a really, really big repair. They worked all night to get that car back going again, and then the remnants of where David crashed ended up catching Will Davison out. That was 58G on board there now, whack into the left-hand fence and then backed into the fence on the other side. And his mate, Nick Percat, actually pulled up at the end of qualifying to make sure that he was OK. But that was an absolute bell ringer for Will Davison, and lucky for both those teams that they were able to repair them overnight.
And Mark, there's a big event coming up next April. The great Dick Johnson turns 80. It's unbelievable, isn't he? Still making waves. What's your favourite Johnson memory or your favourite Johnson story? Because, I mean, you've been shoulder to shoulder with him for decades.
Well, look, Crash, he's an incredible character. I mean, he was really the first one that had the onboard camera as race cam with Channel 7 years and years ago. He did a beautiful piece with Mark Larkham as one of the, you know, the absolute superstars of this sport leading into the race. He's a guy that has always been really laconic. He's actually a really funny guy. His race cam chat was probably the best of everybody that had a go at that, because everyone else used to lose too much time and no one wanted to do it. But DJ had all those great sayings, you know, in those days, and was obviously a huge part of the Ford versus Holden rivalry and the status of the game that we've got right now.
Skaife, when you talked about the co-driver Hazelwood, Kostecki, and Hazelwood had an interesting beginning, you know, when he was coming into the sport, doing a lot of fundraising, and we were hearing about sausage sizzles. You must have, there must be some great stories out there of famous drivers and their humble beginnings.
Look, there certainly is, Robbie, but for young Todd, it's a dream come true. You know, he's 28 years of age. He hadn't, at that point, even won a race in supercar racing or touring car racing. And for him to get a win on the weekend was a dream come true, a life-changing day for that young man. And they've worked so hard, he and his family. You know, his mum was in tears. I gave her a hug in the victory area as all that was unfolding. And I was really proud of the way he handled it, because he started the year in the car. Remember, there's controversial circumstances for Kostecki not to be in the car at the start of the year. Todd started in that car. He handled all that with aplomb when he, you know, was out of a drive for the bulk of the season, come along as a co-driver and did not put a foot wrong, drove absolutely superbly. So in the end, all of the work they did as, you know, parents and him working, you know, they mortgaged their house to keep him racing. So, you know, it's a great story, and it's a great story of, you know, young people working hard to get to where they need to be, and Todd's a great example of that.
Skaife, this panel is a good example of possibly people seeing different views of what's the most Australian sport. But on the weekend, we saw number 1 car was sponsored by Chico Roll, 2 and 3 were Red Bull. That's possibly the best order I've ever heard at a milk bar. I think, if memory serves, number 4 was sponsored by 2 fried dim sims and minimum chips. But this is possibly the most Australian thing I've seen. A brown snake was on the track and had to be taken off it. That's truly Australian. Skaife, have you ever seen something like this on a racetrack?
Well, look, we've had horses on the racetrack up there. We've had dogs. We've had kangaroos. We've had echidnas. But we have seen snakes on the road up there. But that's like an eastern brown, right? So we've had a lot of very brave racing drivers there over the weekend. But the bravest bloke of the week was that bloke, that gentleman who was a flag marshal who come and grabbed that brown snake and was able to get it off the road. He's a hero.
Yeah. Hey, Skaife, you were talking there about the carnage there was in qualifying. What do you put down to the change? Because there was all talk we might see more of that on race day itself. Was it that fact that these guys were driving clean? Because they were fast.
Look, it was super fast, Tony, you know, the fastest race in history. And one of those ones where, you know, it was on from the start. Kostecki and Hazelwood led 157 of the 161 laps. So they were absolutely impeccable. But to your point, there was so much drama. There was 2 crashed Matt Stone racing Camaros. There was the crash that we showed there with David Reynolds and Will Davison. There was Brodie Kostecki actually hit the fence in qualifying in the main qualifying session on Friday afternoon. So there was a lot of incidents through the course of the weekend, and you would have put your house on having, you know, half a dozen safety cars probably. But as it turned out, it was a pretty clean race, and it was a lap, you know, 132 by the time Matt Payne made a little mistake going into the cutting, and that was the end of the Penrite Mustang in the fence there on the right-hand side. So yes, based on it being a really clean, hard, very, very fast race, it was a great race as a motorsport person, but in terms of entertainment, it probably needed some safety cars.
Mark, do you think it was speed or strategy that won the race? Because at one stage, I didn't know whether Kostecki or Feeney may not have even made it because of the fuel situation.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Candice. I was worried about that too. And as it turned out, I don't know whether you read the reports, but Brodie Kostecki's fuel light, so, you know, the dash light that comes on as an alarm for fuel, that come on as he crossed the line. So there wasn't much juice left there, and there was a lot of teams. Will Brown was actually really battling to get home. So there was a lot of teams that were struggling for fuel at the end.
Skaife, I recently had a bingle in my car and it took me 2 months to get it back from the repairers. You know, I'm reading these stories about cars being, you know, repaired in rapid time. It seems to be one of the great advancements. Is it they're almost like magic half the time now, aren't they?
Well, the interesting thing with that crash is that, and this is the time lapse of fixing David Reynolds' car. I mean, to your point, if you sent that car down to the local panel shop, you'll get it back in a couple of months. I mean, that was just a massive amount of work. And what's weird is that they arrive at the racetrack looking like they're in concourse condition, right? And then we drive them like we stole them. So, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there's plenty of drama that goes on through the course of the weekend. And then by the time you have a crash like that, and then the next morning, I walked into that garage. There's a couple of guys that used to work for me in that garage, and I walked into the garage to check on the car. It was like 7 or 7:30 in the morning, and it was absolutely pristine. So, you know, to all the men and women in those teams and the way that they've worked all night to do that, it's just unbelievable.
Do they take freelance work just quietly?
They're probably a bit expensive, Crash, I reckon.
You know you're a good team when you're prepared to drink out of each other's shoes. Kostecki and Hazelwood did just that, Dave. That's just a great look, isn't it?
Oh, I've heard of Blood Brothers, but not Tinea Brothers. That is disgusting. Skaife, this just isn't right. Wouldn't it be healthier to put your mouth around the exhaust than drink out of another man's shoe?
Mate, I could not agree more. I would have never even thought of doing that sort of stuff. So for those guys, and the bad bit was that Kostecki had been crook all week. Oh. So I'm not sure when you want to do a double stint in that car and then drink out of his shoe. That's certainly not us.
Mark Skaife, always great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Speak soon.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
There he is, the great man, Mark Skaife. Right, as we said, it was a Bathurst with very few cars smacking the walls. Although the plane delivering the Peter Brock Trophy wasn't quite so lucky. Came in for a terrific landing there and was getting biggied up by the commentary teams and just how good this was going to go. Sadly, boop.
He lost something.
Yeah, he lost something.
Oh.
Then he decided he had to fly out without having a look there, but obviously everything above board and tickety-boo.
Yeah, I think they went to the black box and it revealed he was just trying to roll a dart and steer it with his legs, so it was a bit out.
Just continuing the Australian.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.